My goal today is to review scoring and colors in Scoreboard. I've already logged in and have landed at my homepage. In the new alert section, I immediately see the impact of colors within the product. The first alert shown is highlighting a red value for the total gross profit KPI for the month of May. If I click on it to investigate, I get down to a detailed view where I can see coloring being displayed in a number of different areas. In the actual and threshold value section, I see a red colored circle and normalized score for the month of May. In the speedometer in the top left, I see that it is in the red. Right above that, I see a red colored rectangle, illustrating that the actual value of 100,000 is down 150,000 from the prior month. This must mean that if I toggle back to April in the top right, the actual should be 250,000, and it is. So I'll return back to May. In the chart in the top right, I see a red colored circle for May. I can also see that May is the only month within the entire last year that is operating in the red. Every other month is in yellow or green. If I look at the KPIs tab in the top left, I see there is a red alert because the month's actual is in the red. If I toggle back to April, the alert goes away. I'll toggle back to May and click on the KPIs tab. I see that there are color indicators in the top left corner of every month. If I hover over the name or one of the numbers, the entire row is highlighted in that color, making it stand out even more. I'll then return back to the Overview tab. In the secondary navigation pane on the left, I see colors appearing throughout the scorecard hierarchy. Without having to click on a different item, I can see that the top level is in yellow for the month, while financial is in red. I can see that the increased revenue objective is in yellow, and if I expand it, I'll see why. One of its KPIs is in the green, one is in yellow, and one is in red. I'll collapse that objective again and focus in on total gross profit. Because that KPI is active on screen, I'm seeing a red color visual in two places, to the left of the KPI name and to the right. If I select a different KPI like product revenue, I see that KPI now has two colors showing, this time in green, while the red to the left of total gross profit has turned gray since it is no longer active on screen. Next, I'd like to return to the home page and see the impact of coloring in other areas of the product. If I click on My KPIs, I'll see just for the KPIs I'm owner for, a colorized view of performance for May 2019 on the left. At the top, there are green, yellow, red, and gray filters that allow me to focus in on a particular area. If I click on red, I'll see just those KPIs. If I click again, I'll return to all KPIs. Next, I'll return to the welcome page by clicking on it and then selecting Kpi Updates to see the KPIs I'm responsible for updating. If my KPIs have been updated, in the top left of the period column, I can see a color indicator showing my performance for that month. If I hover over the KPI name or period, the coloring expands to the entire cell. If I click on Welcome once again, let's take a quick look at My Tasks. Just like with KPIs, I have color indicators for each task on the left and at the top. I have colored filters where I can focus in on maybe just my red task by clicking on it and then clicking again to show all my tasks. I'll go back to the welcome page and now take a look at the impact of coloring within the presentation section: dashboards, charts and reports, and briefings. To do this all at one time, I'm going to select briefings, and then I'm going to switch over to Mobile World and click Select. I see an existing briefing named Monthly Staff Meeting, which contains a collection of all these objects. On the first page of the briefing is the key Kpi History Dashboard. Thanks to coloring, I can quickly see in the speedometers that 2 of the KPIs are in yellow and 2 are in the green. If I focus on the top 3 charts, I can quickly surmise that for the past 2 years, no month was in the red. With the bottom chart's different style, it's a lot harder to surmise that. All I can tell is that, for the most part, improved customer retention has been trending downward. It did tick up slightly in May. Towards the top, if I switch to page 5 of the briefing, I can see the color impact in the sales report. For various lists of sales KPIs, in the top left, I can see a color indicator of performance for each month. Again, if I hover over the name or an individual number, I'll see the coloring take over the entire cell. Thanks to color, I've actually already got a handle on which of the KPIs I need to focus on. Book sales revenue has 6 months that are of concern. Okay, with that, I'd like to take a step all the way back and discuss the concept of normalized scoring in Scoreboard. To help illustrate this, I'm going to select Scorecards and then the demo org structure. I'll then expand examples and scoring types, and then select goal and red flag. KPIs and their associated normalized scores are the foundation of how performance is tracked and presented. Scoreboard assigns a normalized score between 0 to 10 based on a KPI's actual value, thresholds, and scoring type. Scoreboard provides 11 different scoring types, allowing for many options for associating actual performance with normalized scores. If I select Edit towards the bottom, select Scoring Type, and then scroll through that, we'll see each of those different options. I'll leave that as is and select Done. I've put together an example of each one of those scoring types, and I'll just highlight some of the key differences. I'll start with the most popular one, goal and red flag. If I set the red flag value to 500 and have an actual of 500, I know that will be the point it turns red and have a score of 3.33. Conversely, if I have a goal of 800 and have an actual of 800, I know that will be the point it turns green and have a score of 6.67. To determine the points at which 0 and 10 are hit, Scoreboard calculates the difference between the red flag and goal, which in this case is 300, and then subtracts or adds that value to determine the endpoints. For instance, if I have an actual of 200, which is 300 less than the red flag, that is the point it hits 0, effectively the worst value. Conversely, if I have an actual of 1100, which is 300 more than the goal of 800, that is the point it hits 10, effectively the best value. Moving on to 3-color scoring, this option provides more control over defining the best and worst values. Instead of having best and worst auto-assigned, I have the ability to set whatever I want for them. In this case, maybe 0 and 1500. For example, if I had an actual of 200, whereas the score was 0 in the goal red flag model, it now has a score of 1.33. only at an actual of 0 will I have a score of 0. Moving on to goal only. This option requires only that a goal value be set, along with a determination if higher values are better. And I'll just show where that exists under the Edit panel. If that is set to yes, and I'm at the goal or above, I'll be in the green with a score of 10. For example, if I have a goal of 800 with an actual of 800, I'm in green and at 10. If I change the value maybe to 795, I see that I'm in red and the normalized score is 0. Moving on to yes/no scoring, this option is very similar to goal only, but does not require a goal. I also need to make the determination if yes is good or not. Once again, I'll click Edit just to show where that is. And then click Done. If that was set to yes and the actual is no, as we see on screen here, I'll be in the red and have a score of 0. If the actual is yes, I'll be in the green with a score of 10. Moving on to two-color scoring, this option allows for the setting of best and worst values along with the goal. There is no red flag. Anything at or above the goal is green, while anything below the goal is red. There is no yellow. Okay, moving on to four-color blue. This option requires 5 threshold points: worst, red, goal, reach out, and best. A value at each of the threshold points will generate scores of 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, and 10 respectively. For example, an actual of 1200 that equals the reach out will be in blue with a score of 7.5. Moving on to four-color orange. This option is very similar to four-color blue, except the reach out point is replaced with the warning point. For example, an actual that is equal to warning is in orange with a score of 5. Moving on to four-color scored middle, this option requires 3 thresholds: a red flag, yellow flag, and green flag. Colors range from red to yellow to light green to dark green. Moving on to two-color stabilized, this option requires 5 thresholds: low worst, low target, best, high target, and high worst. In this model, scores go from red to green and then back to red. Moving on to 3-color stabilized, this option requires 7 thresholds: low worst, low red flag, low target, best, high target, high red flag, and high worst. Low red flag and high red flag are 2 additional items required. In this model, scores go from red to yellow to green, and then back to yellow and red. Last but not least is the unscored option. This option requires no thresholds and will have no impact on scoring whatsoever. Its purpose is simply for tracking purposes. For instance, a total revenue KPI that allows the summing of all my revenue KPIs and have that visible in one location. Okay, the last item I'd like to review is how scores are rolled up a scorecard hierarchy. Once KPIs have been scored, parent objects like objectives get their score via a weighted average of the scores of the objects directly beneath them. For example, I'll select Normalized Scoring. By default, Scoreboard assigns an equal weight to each KPI. If I had just these 2 KPIs and the score for total gross profit was 0 and the score for employee satisfaction was 10, it sums those 2 up, divides by 2, and produces a score of 5 in yellow for the parent. However, this weight can be customized. To show that, I'll click on Total Gross Profit. select Edit, and then click on Weight. I'll change it to 3, select Save, and then click Done. I'll click Refresh, and if I click on the parent, I now see that it is also in red with a score that has dropped from 5 to 2.5. Lastly, the treatment of nulls also plays a big impact on the color. For instance, if I expand null example, I'll see that total gross profit is yellow and employee satisfaction is gray because an actual has yet to be provided. Although each KPI was assigned an equal weight of 50, if only one has an actual, the null KPI will display a weight of 0. I'm also provided with a tooltip explaining why. If I go back to April, when both KPIs had an actual, I'll see the equal weight of 50. I'll switch back to May. Now, in Settings in the bottom left, if I click on that and select Application Administration, I'll switch the option Ignore Gray Scorecard Items for Color Rollup to No, and select Save. I'll go back to Scorecards and click Refresh, and see that the parent objective has switched from yellow to gray. It will remain that way until all the KPIs it contains have been populated.